All right.
All right, you ready?
Yep, let's do it.
All right. Welcome to Special Fit. Okay.
There you go.
Welcome to Special Fit. My name is Kennedy, and I'm here with Coach Mike. And today we're going to be talking about individual differences.
Yeah. What is that?
Well, it's pretty self-explanatory, I think, just the concept of individual differences. But I think with what we do here, it's definitely, we have to take it into account a lot more than
Yeah.
average day-to-day life.
Um, when I first started Special Fit, it was one of those. So my background is in behavioral
Mm-hmm.
therapy and stuff like that. And one of the things that we learned early on was about individual differences that you have to, even within, say, like an autism diagnosis, you have um, one of my first students, Ito Kadar, who wrote a book, amazing book called Ito in Autism Land, and he said it really well, where he was like, I have an autism that requires like some assistance
Mm.
from another individual because of either his impulses or different things that his body and brain don't. He's a very intelligent individual, but a body that just doesn't obey the brain.
Right.
And so that could come out in a lot of different ways, behavioral challenges and things like that. And then he was comparing himself to Temple Grandin, who's also an author, and she owns a company, and she's really well spoken. But her main issue with autism is, relating to others, so social norms and things like
Yeah.
that. So,
Right.
amongst other things, but she doesn't require physical or assistance by somebody else to help her navigate the world.
Right.
She just may come off as,
Right.
socially awkward or things like
Yeah.
that, or say things, but for the most part, she can, operate in the environment. So he's like, autism and autism, but same
Different.
diagnosis, but how can they be the same?
Yeah. Right.
That he's like, how can two individuals who are vastly different have the same diagnosis? So that's, in our assessment, we will ask what the diagnosis is, but we need way more information than that to start working with an individual because, and I think that's one of the things that we've been kind of steering towards is, the company's name, Specialized Fitness Solutions, for a reason, is that you cannot teach something and say that I can give you like one way of doing everything.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because you have male, female, you have height differences, you have behavioral differences, you have sensory differences. So many factors that play into that person being unique. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the needs of the individual are going to vary, from, as far as like I'm concerned, it'll come from like a few different areas. It's either going to come from a neurological thing, so how the brain processes information, cognition, all that stuff. It's going to be physical by nature, things that are organic to us.
Right.
So, anatomy, imbalances, strength, flexibility, all those things. Or it's going to be individual based, meaning that the personality, the likes, dislikes, all that kind of stuff. We have to, especially with our students, when it comes to communication preferences are really huge, because you have limited speaking, you have non-speaking, speaking, unreliable speech. You have all those different ways. And so being a coach and looking at that, it's like if you just disregard that, you're going to be working against
Right.
what the student needs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So individual differences is probably the first concept. So the neurological, physical, individual based is basically kind of that lens that we use to, um, just as a coach, to look at where are the different things that we're dealing with, where are they coming from. So if a student cannot do, say, a jumping jack or whatnot, why can't they do that? Is it a neurological thing? Is it something that needs to be rehearsed and taught? Is it a physical thing where they just physically lack strength, right? They cannot produce the motor pattern or something like that. There's a disconnect from the brain to the body. Or individual is the, because on paper, if it said he can't do a jumping jack, it doesn't tell you why.
Right.
What if the student was having a meltdown during the assessment? Then, you know, it's hard to know whether or not he or she has the capability to do it, but maybe there was some sort of environmental issue that was happening. There were sensory problems because of the lights or the sounds or a new person or whatnot. So behavioral stuff can be another factor. So we basically have kind of 3 categories to look at. So is it brain based, is it body based, or is it person based?
Right.
And all 3 have to be continuously looked at.
Right.
So as a coach, you always have to kind of have that question in your mind, like, what's the issue here? What's the challenge? Where is it coming from? Because if you know where it's coming from, or at least have an idea, then you'll know how to address it. Because if it was like coordination, like you see them trying but they just can't do it, then you know it's a brain thing. You know, and that's something that can be broken down into steps, modified in a way that you can teach it, right? All right, let's go no feet first and just work the arms, and then work the feet, use some visual cues, things like that, and break it down into steps and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. It's something that has to be practiced over and over, right? Until the brain starts to fall in line, and the body follows suit from there. It's kind of like if you've ever tried to learn choreography or learned an instrument. Like the first time I played guitar, it was like I was looking at a tab, which basically tells you where to put your fingers on what string and what fret and which string to pluck. But it's like the first time you look at it, you're like, one on one, and then bring. And I was like, that doesn't sound like the song, right? But you do it enough times, and you start, and then you don't have to look,
Right.
you know, and then you can just play the song. But body-wise, like proprioception, things like that, it's funny because when I played baseball, everything came very natural to me. But when I started doing like CrossFit and like learning how to snatch and stuff like that,
that's how I felt too.
like it was so weird for me not to be able to, like, what?
Yeah.
Ain't I doing what you're doing? You know, like, they're like, no. And I was like, I need a mirror. Like, I need a...
I was like, how was I so coordinated on the field, but then I can't do this?
I know,
like,
it's so crazy.
I cleaned. The very first thing I ever did when I stepped into a CrossFit gym was clean. And I just look like a fish out of water. I don't.
Yeah.
I like laugh because I'm like, and it's funny because everybody starts that way. It's always so awkward. But once you master it, then you're like, how did I not understand that? But it's repetition.
Yeah, it is repetition, but it's also like feeling it.
Yeah.
Right. So like the physical part is almost about feeling. And so when you have a student that cannot feel their body in space, that, you know, like going back to Ito, like if I remember correctly, there was a part in his book where he was like talking about not being able to feel his body and needing like say when he was laying on his bed to go to sleep, that he needed like a weighted blanket or a lot of blankets on him, otherwise he would feel like his body was floating up towards the ceiling. So imagine like you're walking around and you can't feel now, let alone like moving some weight or doing
Right.
a movement.
Right.
That becomes a really hard thing. So proprioception, understanding the body
Mhm.
in relation to where it is in space and then from one limb to the other. So it's like
Mm.
sometimes you'll see on my videos where you know, I'll do some sort of movement and you'll see the student try, but it's just
Mhm.
something's not connecting.
Yeah.
And so we'll talk about this on another video, but how you prompt and cue
Mhm.
and deliver those things matter a great deal because you have
Right.
to teach to the senses and you have to teach to the person
Yeah.
as a unique individual, and it takes time, and it takes years to kind of master that,
Yeah.
like to really understand like, oh, this is what's going on. And you kind of get into a groove after a while,
Mm.
like once you understand it, like how to deliver cues, how
Mhm.
to even just how to better understand students and what they might be experiencing in the
Mm.
world. Um, so it's pretty fascinating. But when I hear things like that, like he said that, and then also, I don't know if it was him or another student that like they loved water because
Hmm.
water was like a way for them to feel.
Right.
But then I've read from other students like they hate water,
Yeah.
and so
Right.
yeah, so it's so unique
Yeah.
to every. And I sometimes forget that part too, because sometimes when I'm working with the student, and I forget who it was recently, that he was like, "Don't touch me," like and
Mhm.
he put his hand out, like, and I'm like, I gotta,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you get so caught up as a coach, like I know
How to help?
how
Yeah.
to fix this and how to
Yeah.
do it, and he's like, whoa, 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 like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and he literally like swiped my hand away, and I was
Yeah.
just like, all right, got it,
Got
you
it.
know,
Okay. Readjust.
message
Yeah.
received.
Yeah. I don't know if I've worked with a client yet that deals with proprioception issues and stuff like that. I don't know if I have.
You probably have, but not in the same way that I'm describing.
Yeah, that's what I mean in that
Yeah,
kind of way.
that is more of like a tactile defensiveness,
Yeah, I
where
haven't.
they have a sensitivity probably in
Mhm.
the skin, so the way the body will interpret touch will
Mhm.
be offensive,
Right.
so they are probably hyper sensitive.
Mhm.
So touching, like imagine if somebody touched you in a way and you're like, "Ugh,"
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
kind of whatever,
Yeah.
times 100, let's say.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So um, it could be things like sensitivity to like fabrics or things like
Mm.
that, but also just in terms of like person contact
Mhm.
can also be a sensitivity to that in terms of like comfort level.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, also like equated to in some cases where, like for me, depending on the situation, I don't generally like to look at people in their eyes because
Mm.
I'm thinking.
Yeah. That's right.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
I'm thinking and I'm formulating, but I'm also listening. So
Yeah.
when I use, because my auditory sense isn't the best,
Mm.
I can't look and hear at the same
Right.
time.
Mm. Yeah.
So my sensory system is very like selective.
Mm.
So if I'm gonna really listen to you, I'm generally not gonna look at you. Uh,
Which might seem like you're not listening, but actually it's the
right.
opposite.
It's actually it's the
Yeah.
opposite.
Yeah.
And how many times, like, I don't know if you've ever had this experience yet, but um, like I worked in the school system a lot, or even just taking students out in public, like when we used to do like social skills groups and adaptive skills and stuff like that. We'd have to take our clients out into the community, and a lot of times, other people, when we rehearse or practice like social situations, always
Mhm.
ask for eye contact. And inside, I was always like,
No.
no, don't tell
I
him.
know.
Look at
Yeah.
me. Look, I'm over here.
Yeah.
And I'm like, he knows where you
Right.
are.
Right. Yeah.
But I think that the as a coach, if you are at least mindful, it's kind of like a filter or a lens. If you're constantly thinking of those three things, help guide you um, through to finding different ways to cue and prompt and elicit different responses, or to help the student learn,
Mm-hmm.
because the student is generally ready to learn.
Right.
um,
Yeah.
we just have to find ways to get them there.
Yeah. And how common or uncommon is it that all three of those areas like occur at the same time? So there's the mind, the body, and the
The person.
Yeah.
It's very common.
Very.
I think it's, I mean, it's, as humans, it's like, so when you're teaching, you're teaching to the senses.
Mm-hmm.
In kind of the fitness setting, we're looking a lot at three main areas. You're looking at the kinesthetic sense, the auditory sense, and the visual sense.
Mm-hmm.
But with our students, there's so much more factored into that, because you have proprioception and you have the vestibular sense, and then you have the relationship between exteroception and interoception. So exteroception is how the stimulus is coming from the environment outside the body, and then through the skin and then through the visceral organs and all of that. And then the interoception is how we interpret the viscera, internal world, from bottom up and top down. So monitoring of the heartbeat, what your gut's telling you, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's super complex, but all of that affects how the individual will behave, how they will communicate, their mood, all of that stuff. So I would say, to, I guess, always kind of fall back on this, is like everything's always like an art, right? Like like Julian says that all the time, and it really is, because there's going to be a balance there, where on some ends you're going to be more towards that neurological side, and you're going to be teaching to the brain, and then on other sides you're going to be teaching to the body more. And so as a coach, you got to know, when are you teaching to the brain, when are you teaching to the body, but at the top there's the person.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like the person is always there. It's always got to be person first.
Okay, that was my next question.
Yeah.
So
It's in my opinion, the only thing, or the secret to any success of a coach, is always has to be person first. And that's always been, some of my issue with different types of therapies and stuff like that, where they don't really come at it from that angle. Or the opposite, that it's relationship and it matters, but then we get really caught up in the methodology of it and things like that. So I always think that it's got to be person first, relationship first, and then it'll open up avenues to everything else.
Yeah.
Because usually most of the students that I work with, and there's such a wide range of students, like the youngest in the program is 4 years old, and the oldest is 52. And I see the 4-year-old and I see the 52-year-old. So, and actually I saw them today. So, and back to back. So it's like I'm on the ground and working with the 4-year-old, and then I got the 52-year-old, and very different in every way. So there still has to be that human connection. That has to be the first thing, because like for me to work with those two individuals back to back, I have to be able to connect with the 4-year-old and connect with the 52-year-old on their, not level, but on meeting them, like, I guess, heart to heart, let's say. That I have to connect with them in some way, that yes, this is a coach to student relationship, but it's also like a friend to friend relationship. And that's the only way you're going to build trust.
Yeah, for sure.
And that means that I have to like work on myself too, because imagine if I walk in and I'm just like, all right, stretch, do this, do that, and see you later, dude.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? And there's no real like human interaction. It's not gonna be a really pleasurable experience,
Yeah.
especially when there's, say, pain involved, or
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
whatever intensity, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it. They're not gonna really do it for just for that sake because
Yeah.
you tell them to.
Yeah.
There has to be a certain amount of trust,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like some instances where my clients have had the most success is when I've had that relationship with them that I can ask them to do like these crazy things and just be like, okay, I want you to do this and this. Just trust me. It's weird. Just do it.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, that's awesome. Like that worked. Or,
Yeah.
and I think you have to build that trust first before you
Yeah.
can even ask them to do some of those things.
And imagine, like, let's say in a scenario where you maybe make a mistake as a coach, where you design a program and you go after it, and you take, say, 3 months, and maybe your client makes no progress, right? Or they get injured in some way, right? Um, they're more likely to keep the relationship because they know that you're coming from a good place.
Right.
That, hey,
Right.
you know what? I tried this and it didn't work.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? But if you don't build any relationship with the student or the family or anything like that, this is going to be like, all right, well, see you later.
Right.
I'm going to
You
go
don't
to
know
the
what you're
next
doing.
guy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it hasn't really happened like that, but I'm just thinking that the coaching, the whole thing about individual differences is about learning about the student, learning about how they learn, the things they care about, the things that they like, the things that they don't like, what their needs are, what their wants are, all of that, and being kind of, I guess, investing time into understanding those things on every level, on a level where it's like, hey, this is the diagnosis and I need to learn. Because I've had students that come in with diagnosis I've never heard of. You know what I mean? And then, like, I have a client that's like 1 in 100 in the world or something like that. It's like, to spend time to sit there and research and read and to learn, and then learn about how that diagnosis specifically impacts this person.
Right. Right.
Because I think that's kind of the direction we're moving towards, is that specialization of that. We have to make sure that the programming and everything that we do is not just cookie cutter, and it's like, hey, just everybody do it this way or whatnot. We have to look at every person and go, hey, maybe you don't need a barbell, or you don't need dumbbells, or maybe you need a sandbag or this or that, and making that be okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times we fall in love with what is kind of like sexy, what looks, because would it look awesome for somebody to come into the gym and go, hey, I want to observe your program, and you got 6 individuals just banging out reps of the barbell, and they're like, what the hell are you guys doing, kind of thing. It's like, how'd you do that?
Right.
But in my opinion, it would look better if they're all doing the same movement, but in ways that enhances their movement.
Best
So you might have that guy doing dumbbells, this person doing barbell, and this person doing sandbag pressing.
Yeah.
It's to whatever the individual needs and what's going to help them kind of progress. Because in the end, we really are looking for a way for our students to, like, what is the overall thing that we're after is functionality, right? We want our students to use their fitness to engage with the environment.
Yeah.
And whatever we got a program to make that happen is what we need to do.
Right.
Yeah. And if that means, going strength bias and seeing how that affects anxiety or whatever it might be, and seeing, oh wow, this is a big factor. Okay, now what? And then we'll try this for a little bit, and that's pretty much all like special fit's ever really been. It's like one huge experiment
Yeah.
after another.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, we've learned so many concepts and principles from strong fit, but we also learned a lot from CrossFit and
Mm-hmm.
that methodology. And then, you know, we've worked on, you know, bodybuilding
Mm-hmm.
stuff. We've done, you know, hit training, but what we've mostly done is to draw the principles and basically adapt it to our specific students, you know,
Yeah.
our niche of students that we work with, because special needs or disabilities, however you want to call it, like that individual differences part is the key to what we do, because we can draw all those principles, but we still have to modify it or
Right.
change it in a way that will benefit the student.
Right. Right. Because you apply it differently to every person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if we all squatted with barbells, like
Right.
half of my students couldn't do that.
Right.
Probably more than half.
Right.
You know what I mean? But they.
But that doesn't mean they can't squat. That doesn't
That's right.
mean they can't squat heavy. That doesn't
That's
mean.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just looks different, or you use different equipment, or. Yeah.
Yeah. Or you just teach it differently.
Yeah.
You know, it has a different. There's a different purpose for every student. Like
Yeah.
squatting as a human movement, yes, but as an exercise,
Mhm.
it will have a different purpose.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So, I guess, you know, for as a takeaway, it's brain, body, person.
Yeah.
I just made that up, so don't be stealing.
But it's true.
Special fit copyright.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding. Trademark.
Does that count
I
technically?
don't know.
If you call
I
it
don't
out,
know.
I don't know.
I'm saying it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've always in our seminars always talk about neurological, physical, individual base, but
Yeah.
whatever, same.
Body, brain, person, same thing.
It's all us.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
just kidding.
Yeah. Anything else?
I think it's good.
I think that covers it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for watching. If you like our videos, you can check out more on our YouTube channel. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook. If you have any more questions, you can email Mike at special-fit.com. And we'll be back with more videos next week. Bye.